Hi, my name's Dave, and this is my history of everything I've ever played. So I hope you're sitting comfortably. Are you? Have you got a cup of tea? You ready? Okay, let's get on with it. So, my life started in 1989 with my gaming. I actually started in school with a game called Granny's Garden. Now, Granny's Garden involved you just trying to find trees and getting shouted at and dying a lot. But this was back in 1989 for a 4-year-old. It wasn't a great game, but it taught you something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we played it. Stefan, my best friend, remembers Granny's Garden just as fondly as I do, and I think he has a bit of a complex against it too.
Silly! Oh no! We're not. That's somebody else's broom. Oh my!
Roll on to 1990, and my gaming life truly began. And it was the Atari ST. Now this was actually bought for me for my eye and hand coordination. Basically my eyes and my hands would never actually align, so I'd actually try and grab something and it was never there. So the Atari ST was bought to basically get my hand working with what I could see, so hence a mouse and a TV. The problem was it was only really bought for that, but then it kind of stuck and then this kind of happened.
Any machine can play games with you, but I'm the Atari ST.
A real thing, not a plaything.
So games on there that I used to love, and the first game I ever truly remember was Bomb Jack. Bomb Jack is a very odd game where you have to collect bombs. Seems kind of strange really, when you shouldn't really be collecting bombs, you should be staying away from them. But there was Bomb Jack, Uninvited, Badlands, Road Blaster, 9 Lives, Dino Blaster, James Pond 2, the list goes on, and a lot of my early lives started on the Atari ST. During this kind of time in 1992, we managed to get hold of a Game Gear. I always asked for a Master System or a Mega Drive, but my mom and dad always had this thing where they would get me something else instead. In a way, I'm kind of glad they did it, because it basically formed me into who I am now, and I know a lot of games that other people don't. And it's almost a bit of that, oh, I know more things than you do. So the Game Gear in 1992 was literally a tiny Master System. And on that I managed to play games like Ninja Gaiden, or Gaiden, depending on whether you want to pronounce it, Factory Panic, G-Lock, Super Monaco GP, Columns. There's loads of games on there that I managed to play over the years. And when I got rid of it, I was really sad. I wish I'd actually kept it, because it was an interesting little piece of history. In 1993, I remember this very well because we went to a department store called Homeworld, and my dad saw it and he immediately fell in love with it. But it was one of the most reviled consoles of history. But it was the Philips CDI. Now the Philips CDI was essentially a giant DVD player that you could use a remote with, and we bought it thinking that it was going to be the future, and it turned out it wasn't. But that console itself for me was very important, and there was a few games on there that shaped me into who I was in terms of seeing stories. So there was The Seventh Guest, Mad Dog McCree, and of course the most important one of all, Burn Cycle. Burn Cycle is an interesting game where you're getting eaten alive in your brain and you've got to try and stop it. I love it. I think it's one of the best games ever made. A lot of people would disagree with me, but I find it amazing. So that's one of my all-time favourite games. In 1995, it was the PlayStation 1. So during that time, everybody knows what the PlayStation 1 was, and I was one of the first people to kind of get one, and at school I was always one of the most popular people because I had one, and it used to get on my nerves quite a lot that people became my friends because I had a PlayStation 1. People didn't really like me, it's just one of them things at school. But there were so many great games on there. There was Metal Gear Solid, Future Cop LAPD, Reboot, Final Fantasy VII, Broken Sword, Discworld, Medieval, No One Can Stop Mr. Domino, Incredible Crisis, Crazy Ivan. So many games on there that kind of started off on there and they're still being used even now, and there's some that I wish would come back, especially in that list I just gave you there. Now during this time we did manage to get hold of a PC. It was a Hewlett-Packard with a Pentium 166 processor in it, MX, so it's special. Now that we always had one, but we could never really get any of the games to work the way we wanted it to. So I always resorted back to my PS1, and that's where most of my life and my habits where console gaming kicked in. So I've never really been able to kind of kick that habit. Now, during that time, the Game Boy managed to sneak his snout in as well, around 1997 with Pokemon Blue. Yes, I still have the original cartridge, and yes, I did get all 151, and yes, I did lose my virginity quite late on. So pressing on, during this time, that kind of, you know, made me happy until 2001 when the PS2 arrived, the PlayStation 2. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know whether or not my mum and dad were making up for my horrible childhood as a young'un, but when the PS2 arrived, apparently I was like number 15 of 18, and I remember that very vividly from Comet, the electrical store we bought it from. But I was like number 15 of 18 that first came into Comet in the country, and I still have that console even now. It's that to me will never go. It stays with me wherever I go. It's that important to me. But that console had so many games for it that were great. I mean, there was God of War, Second Sight, The Thing, which was based on the film, the Jak series, Jak and Daxter, Shadow of the Colossus, Spider-Man 2. Sadly enough, there's just not enough time for me to tell you every game that I found in there that I played, and I lost a lot of time on that. During that time, in 2003, the PSP arrived. He briefly entered because it was the Medieval remake, and it was the Daxter spin-off. Crisis Core, I played that too. But the PSP is one of those things that I wished could have done better. And I know the Vita's kind of slowing off at the moment, so, you know, it's a bit of a weird one for me, that one. Now, sadly, this is where my Sony allegiance was abandoned after the whole thing that they did where they said, we're going to make you wait and then you can't play any of those old PS2 games on the PS3. So in 2006, I jumped ship to the 360, the Xbox 360. Now, the 360 was a console I went to in an almost immature rage at Sony. But I found it was actually one of the best consoles I'd ever bought, because I didn't know any of the games I wanted for it. I just bought it because I was just being immature about it. But it turned out probably one of the best things I ever did. I mean, it had Mass Effect on there, Gears of War, Command & Conquer 3 and Command & Conquer 3 Kane's Wrath, Bastion, Braid, Portal 1 and 2, the Orange Box. List goes on, and I've probably lost years to that, and I had that for nearly 7 years, and I still have it now.
Where's that tiger? Where's that tiger? Here's that tiger. Where's that tiger?
I did get a PS3, as I wasn't strong enough to kind of say no to it, but that was in 2008. That was purely for Metal Gear Solid 4, the biggest game movie of all time. But the PS3 is in my collection, but it's never really swayed me as it did with the 360. And looking back, the PS3 did pretty well, but the 360 was always the first thing. And to be honest now, my hand is actually kind of fixed around how that pad works. There is no way that I can do anything else now without those pads. At the same time, around 2008, I bought a Wii, purely for Wii Fit. I never got fit on it, unfortunately. But after a while, I became a little disillusioned with it all. All these new consoles were showing up, and I started looking backwards to all the things that I'd missed. And this was around 2009, so I managed to get the Amiga CD32, the Mega Drive, the Mega CD, the Jaguar, the SNES, the NES, the TurboGrafx, the PC Engine. It goes on and on. I have managed recently to get a new PC and a PS4, but they just seem to be lacking something. And I don't know what it is, but I'm sure I'll find out what it is soon enough.